When I first saw him, it was raining, one of those cold, thin rains that makes every sound sharper, every smell heavier. The city was quiet except for the rhythmic tapping on the ground. I had received a call earlier that morning. A small dog had been found lying motionless by the roadside. At first, I thought it was just another stray, perhaps hit by a car. But when I arrived and saw him up close, I realized this was something much worse. Someone had thrown him from a balcony. He was lying on the wet pavement near a puddle, his fur clumped together with mud and blood. His body was twisted in a way that made my chest tighten. For a second, I wasn't sure if he was breathing. When I crouched down, he opened his eyes just barely and looked at me. There was no fear in those eyes, no resistance. Just pain, confusion, and the faintest flicker of hope, as if he was asking, "Are you here to hurt me too, or to help?" I pulled out the small emergency blanket I always keep in my car and gently wrapped it around him. His body was so light, too light. Beneath the thin fur, I could feel every bone, every fragile rib. His heart was still beating, faint but steady. That was enough. I whispered, "Hang in there, buddy. We're going home." When we arrived at the clinic, the vet team was already waiting. The nurse took him from my arms and placed him carefully on the table. His temperature was low, his breathing shallow. They hooked him up to fluids while I stood there, unable to look away. The vet lifted his lip and sighed. Several of his teeth were shattered, almost cleanly cut, as if by some cruel force. His gums were pale, and there was blood dried around his nose. "He's lucky to be alive," the vet murmured. "A few inches different, and his spine would have been gone." I asked, "Can he make it?" The vet paused, then nodded slowly. "If he survives tonight, there's a chance." I stayed with him the whole night. The clinic lights were dimmed, the air heavy with disinfectant. He didn't move, didn't cry. Every few minutes, I'd wet a cloth and dab around his mouth, whispering softly that he wasn't alone anymore. Around midnight, he shifted slightly, his paw twitching as if trying to reach out. I held it in my hand and felt a faint squeeze. That was the moment I knew he wanted to live. The next morning, the vet confirmed what we had feared: he had multiple fractures, internal bruising, and severe anemia. They suspected he had been malnourished for months before being thrown. "Someone kept him indoors," the vet said quietly. "He's never been walked. His nails are overgrown, his muscles weak. Whoever did this, didn't see him as alive." The surgery to stabilize his injuries took nearly 3 hours. I watched through the glass, every second feeling longer than the last. When they finally brought him out, wrapped in clean bandages, I could barely hold back my tears. He looked so small, but in that fragile body was an incredible will to survive. Over the next few days, I visited him every morning. He couldn't eat solid food, so we fed him warm milk mixed with glucose. Sometimes I had to gently open his mouth for him to swallow. On the third day, when I offered the spoon, he licked it on his own for the first time. The nurse smiled and whispered, "He's fighting." I decided to name him Lucky because after everything he'd been through, he still had that one impossible thing left on his side. Day by day, Lucky's strength began to return. The swelling in his legs went down, his eyes started following us around the room. He even wagged his tail once when I came in. It wasn't much, just a small, shaky movement, but it felt like a miracle. The vet said the infection around his wounds was clearing up, though the scars would stay for life. There were difficult moments too. Some nights, he'd wake up trembling, his breathing quick and shallow, eyes darting as if reliving the fall. I'd sit beside him, stroke his head, and whisper, you're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again. Slowly, his breathing would ease, and he'd drift back into sleep. 2 weeks passed. Lucky could now stand for a few seconds, then a few steps. The first time he managed to walk from one side of the room to the other, the entire clinic clapped. He wagged his tail so hard that he lost balance and almost fell, which made us all laugh. For the first time, Lucky looked proud of himself. By the 3rd week, his wounds had closed completely. The once terrified dog had become a gentle soul who loved to rest his head on my lap whenever I sat down. He followed me everywhere, into the kitchen, the garden, even to the gate when I left. The vet told me he could finally go home. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat with Lucky outside the clinic. The air was warm, and for the first time, he wasn't shivering. He leaned against my leg, watching the street quietly. I thought about the person who had thrown him away like trash, about how easily cruelty comes to some people. But I also thought about the dozens of hands that had helped save him, the nurse who stayed late, the vet who refused to give up, the stranger who first made the call. Sometimes, love isn't a grand gesture. Sometimes, it's just showing up when no one else will. Lucky still limps a little, but every time he runs toward me with that crooked smile, I'm reminded that broken things can heal, and lost souls can find their way back to life. He was once the dog nobody wanted. Now, he's the reason I keep rescuing. Because every time I look into his eyes, I see the same question. Why turn into an answer? Because you cared.